Hi, pleasure to be here. Patrycja Sobera. I've got the pleasure of running Digital Workplace Solutions business unit at Unisys. Great question. Well, look, first and foremost, we realized very early on that traditional metrics, KPIs and SLAs were not showing the holistic experience of our clients and their end users. So for us, it was a no-brainer to move away again from very traditional way of looking at support to looking at that more holistic end user experience, and then bring in experience indicators which will give us that full picture, not just from a device perspective, but also from a unified collaboration perspective, from a perspective of using applications or even physical environments. What is our experience of using meeting rooms? So for us, it was a journey that is now 5+ years long. It's been a very tremendously fruitful journey. We've got a number of our clients who have bought into the XLA movement, and ultimately we are really progressing on the trajectory of developing XLAs as a key performance indicator rather than the traditional commercial SLA frameworks. Absolutely. Look, when we look at experience, I think there is a number of experience indicators that we should be looking at to really provide that holistic picture of what the end user is feeling or what they're getting as support. For me, the one metric that I think is a little bit untapped and the one that I am probably the most excited about, it's not necessarily device telemetry or application telemetry. It's more about sentiment. And I think we talk about sentiment in this industry. I actually love the fact that this conference, we are talking more about sentiment, more about how we can measure sentiment and move away perhaps from traditional email-based surveys to more dynamic pop-ups, to more dynamic ways of measuring how an end user is feeling about the service. So for me, it's not so much about the telemetry from systems, from hardware, from applications, but it's essentially what is the human telling us about their experience. Absolutely, and that's key. And I think XLA Institute Live event, has shown us that it's not just about understanding what XLAs are, but ultimately what tangible outcomes XLAs can help us drive if we look at right experience indicators. So you mentioned, for example, reduction of the digital friction. No one wants to deal with an IT issue. We want that to be prevented through telemetry, through data-driven insights. We also want to drive improvements from a cost perspective. So a lot of our clients are actually benefiting from telemetry, which tells them about usage of their software. So perhaps there is tools like Microsoft Project or Visio that is not used widely across the organization, and perhaps through telemetry we can actually drive the costs down by making sure that the right persona, the right roles within the organization have access to these tools. There's a huge untapped potential, I still think, in intelligent refresh. Many of our clients still work very much to OEM's warranties, where perhaps we would really envisage to replace a laptop within 3 or 4 years from procuring it, rather than actually looking at the performance of that device and perhaps the persona that device is serving. Our research and development engineer versus someone who's in front office versus support worker versus frontline worker will have very different requirements. And I think we can ultimately look at performance of a device rather than stick to the kind of old-fashioned ways of looking at warranty, subsequently drive a lot of costs down for our clients. Absolutely. Look, this business is all about being inspired by those moments where we know experience matters. For me, that's both aha and the most beautiful moment on the experience journey was when we were working with one of our healthcare clients, actually in the US, a large organization, 100,000 users, and they were going through quite a complex merger. It was an acquisition which resulted in a complexity in the environment. If you think about duplicate hardware sets, if you think about 2 different disparate support systems, think about disparate applications and a lot of chaos in general. We've worked with them to implement a number of XLAs to really help them on the journey of unifying their device environment, unifying their application environment, their experience, their sentiment, how we collect the data, And when we actually look at the results of that work, what I think was tremendous is the fact that when we look at number of hours which ultimately were given back to the business on the back of proactive resolution of incidents which would have occurred because it was complex, right? It was a mess, it was a migration. We've actually given back to the business 150,000 hours to focus on what they needed to do from the core of their business perspective. And this is a healthcare organization, so to focus on saving lives. So we have given nurses and doctors 150,000 of hours back to focus on saving lives. And for me, that was the most beautiful moment of this journey. And there's a number of clients like this who ultimately are enabled through focus on experience on what matters to their business, on what matters to what they're doing for their clients, for the community. So that's a wonderful story of a great success, which actually has a meaning to all of us. Oh, absolutely. A ton of advice. Look, it's been a journey of 5 years for Unisys. Exciting, very fruitful journey. We're very, very happy to be where we are and have a number of clients, not only on our XLA frameworks, but ultimately providing business value. I think from my perspective, if you are just at the beginning of the journey, try and decomplexify that whole world of, the enigma of what XLAs are. I think there's an opportunity here to start relatively small. I think there's an opportunity here to really think about your existing teams and how perhaps they're already handling some of the telemetry, which can actually be a foundation of your very initial XLA framework. I don't think this has to be a very expensive journey from get-go. I think it's just around setting the right foundations, the right framework, the right processes. And in fact, organizations like XLA Institute with founding members like us can certainly help you on that journey. So it doesn't have to be complex, doesn't have to be expensive. I think there's just need to be a thought leadership around what it is that we're trying to achieve as value on the back of implementing XLAs into our day-to-day operations.